Hello and welcome back to the Choosing Known podcast. I'm Laura Catherine Etheridge, and I am glad to be back with each one of you today. I hope you're having a really nice day and a good week wherever this episode finds you. Hope it's a good week. I'm looking forward to being back together today and jumping back into our continued journey on this idea of abundant life. And I know I've mentioned that verse a lot, but I just love the fact that we have a God that tells us through Jesus who came to earth that I came that you may have life. That's good news. Abundantly. And that is fantastic news. And learning how to have that abundant life and how to stay living in that abundant life. That's what we have been about. And we continue to just unpack different ideas that help us learn more of how do I have more of that and less of a sense of a lacking or empty life. So we're going to continue that journey together today. And as of late, the last number of episodes, we've really been unpacking this idea of how do I take these common experiences that I'm going to face every week, probably, maybe some of them every day, and how do I learn in those places to actually walk with God? How do I learn how to have abundant life in those different places? And so we've talked a lot about the idea of that why intersection of I come upon these things in my life and I'm going to have to pick, do I handle this my way? So I'm going to try to gain fulfillment and find a solution using me and my knowledge and my way, or am I going to go with God's plan and what God says and do it the way that He is making available to me? And so we've done that over the last number of episodes. And today we want to do just a tiny pivot from that to this idea of how do I make God's way become the default way for me? So we've been looking at this slide together of the return. And we've talked about how, this way of doing me and my way, that has been so common. That has been what we've done all of our life. However old we are, we've practiced that. And really, why have we? Because we've had to. Life has come at us in real time for that many years, and we've had to find a way of handling things. We've had to have a solution. And so, this is the way that we know, and it is our default, and it is our primary. It's going to be the one we go with. And we've looked at this slide together and talked about we're going to go that way until we learn how to go with the plan of God. And we've talked a lot about how do I do that, some practical things. But now we want to talk about how do I grow in knowing how this one can become my new default, my primary way, that when I hit that intersection, this is where I naturally go more and more without having to maybe be quite so conscious of it. So that's where we want to go for actually the next few episodes, is really learning how do I, and then also talking about, what are the things that need to become more ingrained. So not just head knowledge, but integration, so it's ingrained inside of me where that becomes the default. So that's where we're headed. And, in thinking about that, I was just pondering, what are some of the basic things that we do need to know there? And like any relationship, I'm going to cover a few things quickly and we're going to go more deeply into a couple ideas here. But like any relationship, I need some time. So part of what helps me go with God's plan, kind of back to that return idea, is part of it I just have to practice it for some time. So any relationship that we have, part of what builds trust, part of what makes something a habit, part of what makes me pick up my phone and call somebody like out of habit, that's going to come from a place of I've grown a relationship there. I've grown enough of a relationship that does feel normal for me. And I don't even think about it anymore. I just grab my phone and I call that person because I know them and because I trust them. So part of it is time. And then part of it is this idea, which is what we're going to go more deeply into today. Part of this idea is actually the idea of thinking more about God. So Tim Keller, you guys hear me quote him a fair amount. I think a lot of him and his content, books and such. So any of his content that you all would come across, that's definitely worth looking at. But, he has this comment I heard recently in one of the things I was watching, and I thought that is such a good comment, because he has this comment and he says, for the person of faith, what they have to do when they come upon challenging things or hard things, or they're feeling stressed, they need to think more. They need to start thinking more, using their head more, processing more. For the person who is not a person of faith, who does not either know God or believe in God, when they come across challenging things, what they need to do is think less, because they want to begin to close out the world around them, so they're not thinking about what's stressing them. And so they begin to narrow, and that's what they need to do. And that's what a lot of people around us, if you notice, when someone is experiencing a lot of stress, they're either going to think more or they're going to think less, and they're going to begin to close out and focus on something else as a way of coping with that. And Keller says, if you're a believer, if you're someone who is someone who knows the Lord and you believe in God, or maybe you're considering it, what you want to do when you come across those moments is begin to think more. And practically, what does that mean? What does it mean to actually think more? There's a verse in Psalm 34, it's 34:3, and it says this: "Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together." Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. What does that mean? Way back when I was younger, and definitely younger in my relationship with God, my walk with God, I used to kind of think, because of the word magnify, we need to get a magnifying glass and we need to start making God bigger. And that is not the way we want to think of this. And I have since realized, no, don't think of it that way. What we want to realize is that in life, we're going to tend to get this tunnel vision. So I brought this little paper towel holder, and this is the way we get. We get like this with life. We get where it narrows in, and we get a very small focus. We could also think of it like the idea of blinders. We begin to get more and more narrow in what we see. And as we do that, we're very focused on something. But as we're so focused on that thing, everything else begins to fade out. That's how focus works. Whatever I'm really focused on, I'm going to see that clearly. And then whatever is way back here in peripheral, that's going to be out of my focus. And so in Psalms 34:3, when it says, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together," that means, you know what? This thing right here, get rid of it. Totally get rid of it, and start, like Keller says, start thinking bigger. Expand your perspective of God. Start thinking bigger of God. Start looking at him. Start magnifying him. That's our eyeballs. We're starting to focus on these different parts of God, and it's like, oh, that part of God. Oh, yeah, and that part of God, and this part of God. And we start magnifying who he is. That is good for us. So that's part of what's going to help us over here. We want to learn, how do I magnify God? And not how do I just do it occasionally? How do I live in that magnified place where that is the God that I am, the omnipresent, we've talked about that lately, the all-powerful God, that I'm so aware that God is here and he's with me. He's constantly with me. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. That's part of what we have to do, is grow in being able to do that. And for that to become our primary and our default. And the second part of that verse, it says, "And let us exalt his name together." What does that mean? Let us exalt his name together. So you all remember probably a few episodes ago, I pulled this slide up for us. And this is the idea of the life dissector. the life dissector. And these are, if we just boil everything way down in our world to make it really clear, like how many ingredients, I'll call it that, how many ingredients actually exist. If I just make it very basic, there's God. God is in existence. There are the heavenly hosts, so heavenly beings. We don't think about those as much these days. We don't talk about them as much, but they're out there. There is mankind. So that's me, and that's you, and that's people, and that's like just relationship people dynamics. So we could spread that very wide. There's people. And then there's the earth. So the things, the stuff of the earth. And animals are, of course, a part of that, but there's all the things of earth, money and belongings and things that we have. So we have all of these things, and then there's these things that are this idea of like waste or like not good, dirty, trash kinds of things. But if we boil everything down, then what we see is everything that we would know of falls into one of these categories. Everything we've ever experienced falls into one of these categories. And what can happen to us when we're wanting to learn, how do I have this default plan of God? How do I make this like my primary way of handling things? We have to begin to look into, wait a second, am I allowing these things, the animals, the earth, mankind, am I allowing them in my head somehow to get out of order? So this verse, and he says, let us exalt his name together. He's saying, let's remember who God is. Let's remember where God is in his ranking of what he's able to do. Who is this God? What can he do? And so we're wanting to remember, yeah, he is the highest. He is the biggest being. That's who he is. And so we want to remember where he is highest, and then we want to magnify him. Who is he? We've talked about that lately. Character of God, he's good. But that's what we need. We need to get to the place that we live with that knowing ongoingly. Oh yeah, he's this highest being. And not only is he the highest, he's good. And we live where that becomes like normal for us to see. We live with this very expanded view instead of this really, really narrow view where we kind of get lost. We just sort of lose sight of these things. And so this is something we want to have in our head. I was thinking about recently a story I heard years ago, and I have not checked to see if this is true, but I see where it makes sense, and it really fits with what we want to understand here. And I was hearing a story about how with elephants, when they're really little, they will sometimes tie a rope around one of their back legs and kind of tie it to a tree because they have a little elephant and they don't want it running away, and so they're training it and they're going to work with this elephant. So they are teaching the elephant not to go far away, and so they have this rope and they tie it around its back foot and they tie it to a tree, and of course it can't go anywhere. It's a little elephant. Now, little elephants are still big, but it's still a little elephant. And yet they say as they grow older, what'll happen is that elephant, once they're big and they're grown, they can actually just take a little piece of string and they can tie that around that little leg of that elephant, now a big elephant, and they can actually just put that on a stake. And that tension, just that little string tension on a little stake, which this massive elephant could easily pull over. This huge elephant could just like take a good step and jerk it out of the ground. That elephant doesn't do that because it thinks it's still a small elephant tied to a really, really big tree. And that is a great picture for us to put in our head to realize, I don't want to live like that. When we live over here with our plan, when we're over here and we've practiced this so much, we have come to believe, like those elephants, boy, life is awful and life is hard and it's way, way, way bigger than me, which is accurate. It is bigger than you. And I can't handle it. And I've got to take everything I have. I've got to bring everything I have to bear on a situation. And so this has become like it's in us, like that elephant with the rope. And so over here, what we want to begin to learn to do, unlike the big elephant, is start breaking that string, start breaking that being tied to that post and realizing I don't have to live that way. I don't have to keep living that way over here unless I want to. Then I can. I can choose to keep living that way. It's a choice, it's an option, but I don't have to. And I can live this way, and this can be my normal. And so part of what I have to do that is I've got to remember who is God. Who is God? Magnify the Lord. Magnify the Lord. And then I also want to remember, where is he in the ranking of things in the world? Let us exalt his name together. Let us lift it up and realize who he is. And so one of the verses that sometimes I will meditate on in that area is Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So here's our life dissector image again. In the beginning, look at where God sits, up above it all. He created the heavens and the earth. If God created everything, he made it. Certainly he can handle the things that come across our path. Certainly he can take care of them. Certainly he can help, as some of the verses talk about in the Bible, he can help us move the mountains. If he made them, of course he can help us move them. So we want to begin to remember that is who this God is that we have. He's the one that created the heavens and he created the earth. Jesus, when he was on the earth, and we read, the stories of Jesus in the Gospels, one of the things that he would many times say to his disciples, and, another person you guys hear me quote a fair amount, Dallas Willard, he talks about how this in some ways was almost like an affectionate nickname that Jesus would use with his disciples. And it was affectionate, but also a little bit like kind of pushing on the heart of the matter. But he would call them little faith ones. So he would say, "Oh, you of little faith, you little faith ones, you have such little faith." And he would continue to remind them they were like these folks that they were tied to this string. And he's like, "Hey, you don't have to keep living over here. You can live over here." But he pointed out the core of what keeps us from doing that. And he would say, your faith is so little. You have such little faith. And as of late, we've talked about this idea of what is faith? What is faith? Galatians 2:20, we've talked about faith is confidence. Faith is confidence. And what is it confidence in? A lot of times people say, "Oh, you should just have faith." And it's kind of like, I don't know, like faith is insurance, or faith is, I don't know, like something you buy at a store or something. It's like, just get a little more faith. Get a little more money. No, faith is not a thing. Faith is in something. Faith is something that's in something. And when we want to grow in our faith, we've got to realize, what is my faith in? And our faith, what Jesus is saying is, your faith is so little and it's not connected to this massive God that we serve. If you realized who he was and you realized where he is, in the beginning, before anything existed, God created the heavens and he created the earth. God created them and he loves us. And anything that we're facing, he is more powerful than any of what we're facing. And what can sometimes keep us from leaning into that is that somehow we doubt, which we'll get into more later, we doubt his goodness. Does he care? Does he see me? Does he care about this circumstance? Oh, yes, he cares. Oh, yes, he cares very, very much. And we have to come back and go, wait a minute, like we've looked at our return, magnify the Lord. Let us exalt. Let's lift him up back inside of us. Let us put him back where he belongs. Our God who created the heavens and the earth. Oh, magnify him. Who is he? The character of God. And let us exalt. Let us lift him up to where he belongs, so that then we begin to approach things where that is what we're aware of. That's part of what helps us. That's that thinking Keller's talking about. That's part of what helps us live in this place where I'm going to approach situations very differently than if I think I'm over here. I'm all alone. I'm like the elephant tied to the stake. We don't want to keep living that way. We want to break free from that. And Jesus says, oh, you of little faith. Like he's saying, come on. There's so much more you can tap into over here. There's so much more. Just come on. Like expand, and you can have more faith. One of the things that he says, beautiful, Matthew 17:20, and he is speaking, he replies, because you have so little faith, because you have so little confidence in God, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. We sometimes want to shut down with that verse because it's like, that just sounds way too out there, too good to be true. We can go with that. I want to encourage you, listen again to what Jesus is saying, because he's telling us how we can live over here in abundant life. And he says, your faith is too small because you have so little faith in God, confidence in who God is. I tell you, if you have faith, confidence in God, the size of a mustard seed. Now, why would he bring that up? A mustard seed in their world would have been one of the smallest things that they would have known, that, would have been a great example for him to point to. And Jesus is making the point to them, and he's making the point to us. It isn't about how much of it you have. It's in what it's in. That's where the power is. It's in what your faith is in, not how much you have. And he's saying, if you have just this teeny tiny itty bitty amount, but you have it in God, confidence in God, who he is, what he's able to do, then you can say to this mountain, move from here to there. Now, why would he use the example of a mountain? A mountain would be one of the biggest things in that time period. It would be one of the heaviest things. It would be one of the most impossible things to move. A mountain. So if you have faith, one of the tiniest things in God, then something that is so big, and mountains take a lot of forms. Mountains can be something in our life, something in our past, something we're currently facing, something that needs to take place and we have no idea how to make it take place. If you have that kind of faith, he says, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there. Mountain, be changed. Circumstance in my life, be changed. Impossible thing in my life, be changed. And it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Why is that? Let's put this slide back up again, the life dissector. Because, like we've talked about in the last few episodes, the Lord is my shepherd and he is with me. And so if I realize I have faith the size of a mustard seed, I realize who God is, his character, how big he is. In the beginning, he created the heavens and the earth. If I realize that's who this God is, then, and he's with me and he loves me, then why could I not say to this mountain in faith in God, move from here to there, and expect it to move? It's not me moving it. It's my God who is with me, who is moving the impossible, way bigger than me, hard, huge things. I got mustard seed. That's what I'm holding. My little mustard seed. My little mustard seed. And it's my confidence in my God who is with me. And he is the one that moves the mountains. And if he's the one looking at this slide, if he's the one that made the heavens and the earth, what is the moving of one mountain for him? Nothing. It's nothing. But to us, it becomes impossible because we get back to kind of the beginning of our conversation. We get narrowed in on seeing it, and it's so big and it's so impossible and it's so huge. And God has like evaporated in our understanding. He's not even there. And we have to continue to practice bringing him back to get to the point that we realize, oh, just wait 1 minute. Yes, that mountain's way bigger than me, but oh, magnify the Lord. I will exalt his name. God is with me. This mountain is nothing for him, and I'm going to have confidence, faith in God and what he's able to do. So we're gonna unpack more of this over the next few episodes. What are those things that creep up above God somehow in our head? We're back to that elephant who feels stuck. What are those things that just, they sneak up there because over here without God or without knowing how to apply God, that felt real and true and has been. But if we believe in God, who he says he is and what he's able to do, we get to live a whole different way. So this week, because we want to always make this practical, just start noticing that when you come across something difficult, notice, has God evaporated? You know, that's that idea of omnipresent. Has he just sort of evaporated? And then think about this life dissector idea. Where is he in placement? Is he weaker? Is he lesser than? Do I not even see him anywhere? What is crept up as being the biggest, the mountain, the biggest, the strongest, the highest? What snuck up there that I need to remember? Oh, magnify the Lord. Who is God? And let me exalt his name. Let me begin to put him back up where he belongs, where it is real and true that he is. And let me bring that to this circumstance and say in prayer to the Father, confidence, here's that confidence, that faith in God, my mustard seed faith. Father, please help me with this thing that is a mountain for me. You are with me. I can't move this, but you can, and more than can you want to. That's the goodness of God. He wants to help us move the mountains. He wants us to be at a point where, like Jesus said, you have life, and not just life, you have it abundantly. Abundantly. So practice that this week. Just look at that as you come across things and have a fantastic week. Enjoy the Lord, and we will get back together soon and keep exploring how do we live over here continually. All right, gang. See you next time.